Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you're located. Welcome to CPSE's sponsored webinar with FirstWatch Fire Operations Analytics and Accreditation Module. Today's presenters are Chris Carlson, FirstWatch Senior Product Manager, Terry Fitch, FirstWatch Director of Sales, and Daniel Brown, FirstWatch Product Solutions Owner. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the chat window in the GoToWebinar panel on your screen. Also on the side panel are handouts available for download. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email with the link to the recording so you can share it with others. At the end of the webinar, please contact FirstWatch directly for additional information, and be sure to visit their booth at the 2024 Excellence Conference, February 27th through March 1st at the Caribe Royale Convention Center in Orlando, Florida. Thank you for attending, and now Chris will begin the webinar.
Well, thank you, Cindy. Good morning, afternoon to everybody. We appreciate you carving out a little bit of your time so that we can share some different ideas with you about data and fire operations. A little bit about who we are for those of you that may not be all that familiar. FirstWatch has been doing public safety and public health data analysis for about 25 years now. We currently have partner agencies out there that cover 54% of the population of the United States. We have about 750 million records that we've been able to acquire and maintain on EMS, fire, public safety, and public health records. So we've been doing this for a while. With us today is Terry Fitch, our Director of Sales. He's been with FirstWatch for, 10 years, something like that, Terry. Before that, he was with TriTech.
Yep, 10 years.
Daniel Brown is our Senior Product Solutions Owner and kind of the genius of the back-end data and putting this all together. And he has a fire service and public safety communications background. Jordan Hanovan has a fire service background and is a data geek like the rest of us, and works on our reporting section and is within the fire vertical as well. Real briefly for myself, I'm a recovering fire chief. I worked for a couple of different California municipalities. I was on the board of directors for the League of California Cities and California Fire Chiefs back in the day. Done curriculum development for the U.S. Fire Academy. Then went in the private sector, spent years consulting, and then ran the Xerox Global Public Safety division for about 10 years before coming over to FirstWatch about 8 years ago. So my primary responsibilities in FirstWatch are products related to several verticals: fire, cybersecurity, financial, and hospital healthcare data integration are first and foremost among them. So that's kind of what we do in a proverbial nutshell. I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about the foam module, how it evolved, and what it might be able to do for you. As I said, FirstWatch has been doing this stuff for a very long time. We have a lot of customers in both the US and Canada. So several of our customers came to us once the accreditation process started and said, hey, is there a way you can help us with the data thing here? It seems to be kind of in your sweet spot. So that's 5 or 6 years ago, we started figuring out ways that we could assist you in automating at least the data portion of your accreditation efforts. And it's been an evolutionary product. It's been evolving for quite some time. One of the things that I wanted to share with you as kind of a starting point is what you'll recognize here. It's going to take a second to load. I apologize. Is the ACR. So that's a really good starting point, and it obviously drives a lot of what we've done or are doing in foam specifically. Let me bring this just up in a little different way, and I'll just do it this way. Here we go. So you'll recognize this as an ACR. We've upgraded this continually through the different versions of the accreditation guide. We now have everything's reported in the 90th percentile. Because many of our customers are very interested in just operational data, but really can't or aren't interested necessarily in accreditation, we create a lot of flexibility and robust filtering into this and all the tools. So you can see the ACR is set up with a default 5-year comparison of data across the past 5 years, but you also have the ability to go in if you want to just do year over year or define specific dates. You have the ability to go in and do that. You'll all recognize that if you have some familiarity with accreditation of kind of what I call the big six, right? So we've got alarm handling, turnout time, travel time for first unit, travel time for total ERF concentration, and then total response time, the same for the first unit and total ERF concentration for within your system. Urban and rural designation. The benchmark is, of course, the goal that you and your HJ have adopted. Current formats will always be updated for you. And then we also have one ACR for each combination of hazard category and classification. So as you can see here, we have a total of 13. Fire special 90%. We have fire moderate, fire medium, EMS major, however you set it up within your standards of cover guide. We have the ability to be flexible enough to kind of do that for you. So again, you can create whatever date range you want to look at. You can include the current year or exclude the current year. So for example, when you go through your site visits and actual accreditation, you may want to exclude the data from the first year if you're only 2 months into an annual evaluation period, for example. So throughout this whole thing, you'll see a common thread that we have a great deal of I'll call it customization. A lot of, obviously, the ERFs and response patterns are determined on a local agency basis, so we have to be very flexible to meet your needs with respect to that. And we do that throughout the module. So just kind of wanted to start here. ACR, everyone's fairly familiar with it. Down here, excuse me, when we get into the ERF concentration, the N number is the total number of data points that have successfully entered into that. So for example, for 2022, there's been 3 calls within Fire Special that have reached full ERF distribution. And by clicking on that, then we can take us to a drill down, if you will, of what information is available related to those 3 specific calls. So here are the 3 calls that made up the ERF full concentration. And you also have the ability then to drill down whether we're using CAD data or RMS data or a combination thereof. You have the ability then to drill down into the specific information that we received or have received from the data source, that you can look without having to log off, log on, go to another screen, look at all the information that is provided either within the RMS, CAD, or, as I said, both of them moving forward. So this is, we've really become a lot more visual in our representation of this, right? So let me go back here. My apologies, I got myself sideways. So we've become much more geographical and much more focused on kind of the overall systems approach to what's going on. So the current landing page looks like this for the module. And just to kind of give you a contextual understanding of what's happening, FirstWatch does a lot of stuff, right? So we do, communication, operator, turnout times. We do, clinical health. We do contractual compliance for ambulance responses. We do a whole bunch of stuff. So FOAM is really a module where we try to consolidate issues related specifically to what the title may infer: Fire Operations Analytics and Accreditation Module. We kind of just all put it in one place. So this particular module starts with this now. And this landing page then is designed just to give you a quick overview of what's going on within your system, summary of incidents, average per day, total number of responses generated by those incidents, and then the average of total responses for the date period selected, which is variable and can be selected by the user up here. The ability to geo-reference things is totally up to you. We're very flexible. These are planning zones. You can do station zones. You can do battalions. You can do divisions. You can do councilmatic districts. However you want to set it up, we are able to work with you and set up various geographic areas. And you can represent whatever you want. This is particularly set up for incident count, but you can go, for example, you wanted to know, where are your good total response times? It shifts the data with any luck. Maybe not. It shifts the data to each specific response zone, and then you have the ability to determine what's going on within that. By selecting a zone, it then changes the data reflected up here. So you can see up here, this is again driven kind of by the ACR, right? What are the total number of incidents? Of those, how many had ERF arrivals? What is the alarm handling time, the turnout time, travel time, total response, then the ERF configurations as we've described below. These are conditionally formatted, and the conditional formatting is based on parameters that you decide. So if you have a 2-minute standard or a 1:30 turnout time standard, we will adjust those to reflect, what's good for you. Red is typically bad, green is typically good. So just a quick look, you can kind of see what's going on. You can also then sort this out if you want by various types of calls, EMS, excluded calls, which I'll talk to you a little bit more detail here a little bit later on, or essentially any filter criteria that is important to you that you want to look at that are related to your KPIs, standards of cover, goals, objectives, or a politically focused issue, for example, that you might want to look at. We can include all of those layers for you as you move forward. So this is the landing page, just a quick overview. Over here, you'll see that you have a direct link to SQL reports, which is basically the same material. They're just not as visual, but sometimes they're better to utilize if you want to cut and paste or export them out for purposes of your standards of cover document or doing a council report or whatever use you might have. So you have the ability to directly access those from here. We also then provide you with a very flexible heat map. The heat map, again, can be broken down by category or by station or however you want to do it. If we select a specific category, I'll just pick excluded because that's a little bit different. You can see the map shows, it's just a heat map, shows you what problem areas you may have or areas that you want to focus on. And up here under instance summary is an example of auto text. So we can work with you and set you up if there's specific language that you want to be reflected in every monthly report or annual report. Your mayor is very concerned about, a hospital, or is concerned about EMS calls or opiate overdoses or whatever. We have the ability to create this language for you, and then the numerical portions of that just are filled in based on whatever date range you select. So you'll always have essentially a pre-printed available narrative of those issues that are important to you that you want to look at. One of the things that makes us a little bit different, we're kind of far down the road now with working on a tool that many of our customers find beneficial, and that is really looking at the Heron's formula triaxle risk model that some of our customers use as basically the tool for identifying their risk score. Others look at it as an opportunity to validate or look at ways of evaluating the accuracy or the validation of their current risk methodology. But you can see over here, we know what your number of calls is, what the probability of the event occurring is. We know what your response patterns are because we set it up that way so we can gauge the impact on the fire department. And that really only leaves you to determine what the community consequence is for the various types of combinations of incidents and property types. So as you switch these will switch and move over. These will then generate a median risk score. And then the thing that's left for you to do as a public policy matter is determine where the risk score parameter lines fall, right? What's a what's a high risk, what's moderate risk, et cetera, going forward. So kind of a very cool tool. Done a lot of development work on it, worked with a lot of customers to get there. And so this is something that's a little bit different, but is of high value to many of our customers. Turnout time report, one of the things that you can most actively manage in terms of your overall capacity utilization. Couple of different options here. One, we show it temporally over time. We do that because part of what we also do as a kind of a separate effort is work with our customers in process improvement efforts. And so we get into statistical process control charts and process improvement efforts as we move forward. But viewing it temporally is much more meaningful, obviously, than just a single point in time, right? So this provides a contextual understanding for you and your communities about what are we doing in terms of, in this case, obviously, turnout times. This is separated out by station. And of course, within each station, we have drill downs to each unit found within each station, conditionally formatted. If you're outside of the parameters that, again, you as a customer can define, this goes to red, and it just jumps out at you as like, oh, so that's where our problems are. We also can do a variety of turnout time standards. If, for example, in this case, you have different turnout time standards for night and day, we can reflect that. If you have different turnout time standards for, rescue versus structured fire versus EMS, we can include those in here as well and reflect that, so you can kind of take a look at things that are important to you. This is what we call the Incident Count and Response Performance Report. We lovingly call it the eye creeper. But this is kind of just a really nice high overview. I kind of tend to think of it as an end of month report or an end of shift cycle report, or end of year report. This just basically breaks out total number of incidents, total number of responses for each incident, and then by station. Each station then also, all my drill downs are not working. Well, that's not good. Sorry about that. Each of these stations then can reflect, well, total failure here. Let me see what happened. This must be a live demo. All right, well, sorry about that. Anyway, then this each reflects by the icons what's going on with respect to each particular unit and type of response. Incident dashboard is the ability to basically either pop up in a station, public access, whatever. It's a really nice overview of what's going on. Calls by type of day, hour of day, types of calls, and then reflecting the activity of each of these types of calls. You're able to select and sort by doing that. You can do this by type of call. You can do it by shift. Basically, any way you want to look at it, you can kind of play with the data. Wow, this is not good. I apologize for this. Wow. All right. This is another incident dashboard. Refresh. All right, let me try it one more time. I apologize for this, folks. When all else fails, just reboot, right? All right, incident count, or back to our eye creeper. Again, if you select EMS, this will change. Excluded incidents, if you want to know where the incidents are that you're excluding from your analysis, this will identify it for you and identify where those are. And again, I'll get in a little more detail on that. You can do it by station, shift, call type, however you want to look at it. You can provide summaries. And then how are we doing against our established parameters for each of those: unit response, travel, turnout, etc. Incident dashboard, we just talked about real quickly. Another one using RMS data as opposed to CAD data. You can get into actually the incident codes and types. This is probably a good time to talk about NERIS. Many or not, or all of you may be aware that NFIRS is being deprecated over the next couple of years. So we're beginning the process to use the NERIS data set and do a quick transition over. It won't be quick, but do a transition over to NERIS. We'll keep both sides alive for a while, and that'll be one of the benefits for our customers, because we'll be able to basically, while NERIS and NFIRS will be completely different data sets, we will be able to have both data sets available so that we can do an analysis for your historical data whenever NERIS takes over. So we're planning on working on that in Q1 of 2024, and hopefully we'll have it completed by mid-year with the option to use the NERIS data as we move forward. So same type of thing over here, again broken down by incident type codes. These are the NFIRS codes, obviously. Give you an idea of what you're going on, what your activity levels are, how they look. Unit performance dashboard. Again, we have the automatic text or the automated text response summary down here. We can just again provide the data within a prefabricated narrative. So if you just need this for cut and paste or as a focus, you are able to do this. Again, we have the drill down and drop down here of the response, total types of response and your levels of performance at the 90th percentile level for those types of things. So again, this is just kind of a nice little summary view of your operations and what's going on. Station reliability reflects the degree to which a unit from a given either planning zone or response area or station area is actually first in to that response area. So for example, over here, planning zone 2, you can see with a hover function that planning zone 2, 78.45% of the time, we have a unit from station 2 first in to calls in station 2's area. And we have the ability then to do this by shift or set it down by type of call, where your excluded calls are, et cetera, et cetera. So you have the ability to just kind of look at that and see are our resources in the right place at the right time doing the right kind of thing. Time analysis is just a graph of those response times that we talked about. So it's just a summary by station. So real quick and dirty, you can see what's going on. If you want just a specific call, EMS, want to have my fires are going, we can do that. And we can create extra, if you want a greater degree of granularity for extra development, we can go ahead and do that for you as well. You want to look at your overall activity, again, have this robust filtering capability. So we can include whatever areas you want to look at. We can include what types of calls or filter by what types of calls you are and what kind of shift, which shifts are doing what. This is kind of just a standard heat graph. When is my busiest times of day, day of week, hour of day, you know, what am I doing activity wise? Which brings us to the UHU, unit hour utilization call, based only on emergency responses or dispatch calls. So, you know, in this particular case, we see engines are at about a, 3.3% or 0.3 UHU, trucks, rescue, all units together. And we, do this, we can do this by station. We can include or exclude things. If you don't want your battalion chief or duty officer included, we can take those out, put them in. If you just want to, you're interested in doing a study on your trucks or your ladders, you have the ability to do that and look at it, from that particular perspective. You just want to do it by station, we can put station filters in here. So if you're getting ready to, head into a discussion about the need for an additional unit or an additional station or the relocation of a station, this is a really good starting point to start talking about, degree of activity that the units or the stations are experiencing, including simultaneous calls within the district and those kinds of things that we can look at through the station reliability report. And then one of the things we've spent a fair amount of effort on is because many of our customers have said the kind of greatest expenditure of sweat equity, at least recently, has been in talking about excluded calls. What kind of calls are we excluding from our analysis, to define our levels of service? And it's a critical question, and it's, been around for forever. But one of the things that we can do better than most, and certainly as an assist to our customers, is start helping identify that process and how can we make it easier for people to explain, their exclusion and or justify the specific calls excluded in terms of the consistency with their exclusion policy moving forward. So this is a really nice, quick, simple visual representation of excluded calls that we didn't include. So again, if you're familiar with accreditation, you want to include calls that are representative of the normal operations. And when I say normal, I mean, it includes weather and other things. But you don't necessarily need to take a penalty for lockouts or special service calls that really don't reflect the, from a response time perspective, what your operation is doing. So all of those obviously should be consistent with your excluded call policy, within your SOC or other documents. But this then takes this and says, okay, so what's going on and where is it? So we can see for the time selected here, 31,300 incidents. Of those, 69 were excluded from the report. Well, what were they? Well, 51% were, moderate risk. And if I select that, it will then tell me, well, why did we exclude those calls? 42 were out of jurisdiction, 4 were reassigned, 3 were upgraded to something else, and 2 we just didn't have any units. We were at level 0 and couldn't do it. So quick, high overview of what's going on. And if you're interested in a specific combination of call categories and classifications, you can select those over here. The other thing that we've created in the world of exclusions is an exclusion report, right? So what this basically does is it lines up every call that's within the data set. You can go into it and say, well, let me see, I want to worry about, what my travel time is. So I can sort these by travel time, and then I can go down here, and again, I have this link, right? So I can say 23-minute travel time, what the heck? And I can go then back over here, and with any luck, it'll bring up the data related to that particular call. So now you can see that if you're sitting there with a peer review committee, you're trying to figure out like what happened on this call, with one click, you basically then can get all the information that you have available to you to justify or to explain the, what's going on with that particular call. You then have the ability to go, okay, so why was that? You review that document, you go back and you go, oh, okay, well, it was downgraded or pending law enforcement, it was a stand back. Save changes, yeah, want to do that. So what it then does is remove that particular call from the data set, right? So these are should be all approved reasons for exclusion. But then at the very end of the day, you then have the new data set that is reflective of this being excluded from that particular call. And I'm gonna look that back since that's kind of live data. And then the one thing I wanted to do is then that's all available in a standard report that we can generate for you. Let's go previous year. View the report, and this basically will just provide you and your peer assessment team with a list of all the calls that were excluded, with the ability then also, if you forwarded this over to them with a single click, it can take you to that particular call. You can get all that information. And so then rather than having to go through a year's worth of data going, hey, explain this, explain this, explain this, this is all now in one place, and it's all you really have to worry about. And then you can go for the explanation of what's going on and why you did what you did. I talked a little bit about this earlier on, but as I said, we believe very firmly that a single data point doesn't tell you a whole lot, that you have to have some kind of temporal context to what's going on to understand, is it really getting better, or is it really getting worse, or is it really staying the same? So we provide, again, you'll notice here, these are the big six, right? So we've got alarm processing, turnout time, travel time, first on scene, total response time, ERF, and total time, travel time in ERF. And we have the ability to sort this out either by the overall system or by urban or rural, depending upon how you designate that. I mentioned before that we could show this as a statistical process control chart. So they have the ability to do that. If any of you are interested in process improvement or familiar with process improvement efforts, you'll recognize what this is. So this kind of shows you what's in normal standard control and what are special variation problems that actually can be managed and happen. When you have shifts like this, that means something happened. In this case, like for example, alarm processing time, maybe they introduced MPDS or something else that dramatically increased their response time. Maybe they went from a regional fire dispatch to a PD dispatch. Whatever the case may be, it clearly gives you the opportunity to look and go, oh, look at something happened here. What's going on? Could be good, could be bad, could be indifferent, but at least you could have a view of your system over time to see what's going on. These charts can also then be represented as basically any way you want to show it. You show bar chart, column chart, line chart, etc. as you move through. So that's kind of what we do with foam, the availability. As I said, there's a little bit of sweat equity involved in defining your ERFs and staffing patterns and all of that. One of the things that I find amazing is, when I go to the various conferences and hear people talk about, oh, this is easy, we can do this. It's really not, because I think everybody on this call knows that, there are variables in the system, simultaneous calls within an area. Unit designations change. There's an inverse relationship between speed of data and its accuracy. So we spend a pretty fair amount of time identifying where those pitfalls are and trying to identify where they are. The bad news is it takes a little bit of sweat equity to do it. The good news is once you're done with it, you have really good valid data that's not going to be constantly changing. And you won't have to have that nightmare scenario where you go tell your city manager something on Tuesday, and then get a couple of outlier pieces of data, and the answer then changes on Wednesday, and no one can understand why, affecting your credibility and the credibility of your department. So kind of with that, I have a couple other things I can quickly go over, but now might be a really good time to just kind of stop and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, Chris, we do have a few. First, I wanted to ask Chris Pappas, or Pappas, I'm not sure if I said it right. You have your hand raised. Do you want to unmute and ask a question? There you are. No? Let's see. Oh, I see you asked your question. You can't unmute. Okay, copy. So let me go up. If you want to just type your question in, Chris, I can ask Chris Carlson on that. Let me ask another question for you, Chris. We've got a few that have come in now. One of them is, are these interactive reports all embedded Power BI dashboards?
On the interactive side, yes, they are. On the standard report side, they're SQL report outputs.
Okay, then the next one is, thank you. The next one is, are excluded calls synonymous to outliers?
Well, it depends. You can have an outlier that's still totally reflective of things that might happen in your community, right? So I think an example that's used often is the big freeze in Dallas a few years ago, right? A lot of people were trying to exclude those numbers, but it's like, hey, it was an act of nature. It does happen. So you kind of got to at least, notice that it's there. So really the notion of excluded calls is between CFAI and each individual agency. But we're willing to include or exclude, whatever you want. But the important part is they need to be consistent with your excluded call policy that should be part of your SOC or part of your strategic plan or other document.
Excellent. Okay, and then the next one is, can wall times be charted or captured in foam as well?
So it's funny you should mention that, and what an excellent segue. So the direct answer is no. We don't really design it to do that. This is more really on an operational side. But one of the things that we do have, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but one of the other products that we have is what we call the Hospital Transport Status Dashboard, that was designed specifically to kind of deal with that issue, right? It started initially with how is the wall of time going? What are we doing? When's the transfer of care occurring? And then it evolved into, and our current efforts really are around integrating HL7 data, Epic and others, so that we can get a better understanding, not just of ambulance traffic, but of total ER impact, which, as I'm sure most people know, is often impacted by imaging availability, staffing levels, those kinds of things. So we're beginning to get into incorporating those issues with us. So the Hospital Transport Status Dashboard has several different views. The overall system view is really designed to identify who your hospitals are, what's the historical high demand been, what's your last 24-hour demand been, who is currently en route or arrived at a given facility. These are conditionally formatted. They get darker as you get closer into the parameters that were reflected in whatever the county or the agency wants to do. In answer to the next question, yes, we can call it, anything but wall if you want it. Some people like wall time, other people like whatever. So that doesn't matter. We can do whatever you want to do there. And then these are conditionally formatted again. So in this particular case, I think if it's less than 3, it stays black. I think it's 4 to 6. 4 to 6, I think, turns yellow. And then if you have over 6 units arrived or en route, it goes red, just so you're aware, of what's going on. And then each hospital has, again, the drill down. You'll recognize this, this drill down ability to look at the call, what's going on, where are we? We also have a crew view that is designed for mobile application. If you have a system where your caregiver has some discretion where to go, this is just meant to give a quick high overview of what's busy, what's not busy. If I had my odds, maybe I wouldn't want to go to John Muir here, et cetera. Facility view is designed for facilities to look at. We have 2 different versions of this because in some markets, everybody wants to play together and understand what the impact to the total system is and what's going on. So in other systems, one large healthcare entity doesn't want the other large healthcare entity to know anything about what they're doing. So they want only their view of their hospital or their community of hospitals. So we have the ability to put this, together any way you really want to look at it. And here, again, good summary on the left side. This is really designed more to be a non-touch kind of static dashboard. Think of it like a tracking board in an ED. So over here on the left, how busy I've been the last 3 hours. What's my average elapsed time there is 51 minutes. The max of those 5 calls has been 1 hour and 31. And currently what's going on, I got one en route, I got one there. I've got one at between 30 and 59 minutes. And you can see that it's color coded up here to relate to that. So I can look on the board and go, Medic 321's like been here. I need to get them out or go do something with them. And again, just a historical view to understand, are we really busy today, or is this just, we're understaffed or whatever the case? Supervisor view is much like a crew view, same type of thing, high level overview, just with a focus really on the elapsed time so that people can, or supervisor can look at it, see what's going on. And then the dispatch view we've designed really for Canada that it's a different animal, so I don't really need to spend a lot of time on that. But so we do have the ability through the HTSD to do this, but it's a little bit deeper dive than just reflecting on what's going on from a fire operational standpoint by itself, if that makes sense.
Excellent. You ready for your next one?
No, probably not.
My department uses ESO as our RMS. Would foam pull from ESO as compared to CAD?
Yes, absolutely. We can pull. I don't know the exact number, Terry. Maybe you can help me. But I mean, basically, if it's a utilized RMS or CAD system, we've got a connection to it. We've hooked to it in one or more places. So yes, and the best application in foam is to have both CAD and RMS data. That way you can do a comparison between type of call dispatched and situation found. So at the end of the day, you can report on both or either. As you know, oftentimes what you get dispatched to is not what you find. So, you have the ability to do that. And so, yeah, we can do either or a combination thereof. And ESO is one of our major partners. Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but we have a ton of ESO integrations we've done.
Yeah, we do have quite a few. Okay, so Chris, the next one is, I'm getting lost here. Oh, here it is. How do we get our data into the FirstWatch platform? I ask because we currently run a completely on-premises solution for our RMS and CAD within our county intranet.
Okay.
Love that question.
Yeah. So is Daniel still on, or he can correct me when I screw this one up?
I believe he is.
I am here, yes.
All right. So bottom line is, especially in a proprietary system like that, what we would recommend you do, because we don't want to necessarily touch your production data, is kind of set up a replicated server that we can hook into. We can do read-only if you want. We can have limitations on whatever files you want or don't want us to have. We encrypt and compress the data, send it over to our servers where we uncompress it and de-encrypt it, run it through the algorithms that we do, and then produce the outputs that we have. So whether it's a standalone server on your end or whether it's part of a regional system, by using that model with doing a replicated server, then we kind of stay out of everybody's production and minimize the impact to either your IT staff or the comm center's regional data networks center. Does that cover it adequately? Daniel, you want to correct me or add anything to that?
No, I would just add that if there's some data your county IT staff is not comfortable sending us, that's fine. They can create a view for us, a filtered view. If your data is mingled with law enforcement data, they can create a view that where we're just pulling fire data, for example.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
That's the end of the questions so far. If you want to go ahead and continue, if you have anything else, or
well, so yeah, I just talked about hospital transport status dashboard. Then I'll just real quickly talk on one other project that we've got going here. Some of you may be aware that in the in the EMS community and medical director community, there's a growing issue about code 3 responses. And, you know, I kind of view it a little bit differently. I mean, to me, the bigger question is, are we getting the right care to the right patient in the right time in the right way, right? So there's been a couple studies out that show, you know, the risk reward for, you know, traveling code 3 to all sorts of EMS calls, you know, maybe isn't there. How do we do it? And, you know, our approach is, well, cool, but let's look at the data first and, you know, see what we do before we start making major changes and have to deal with, you know, the political implications of all of that. So we've come up with kind of this. If you're an EMS agency or are all interested in any of this, I'll be really quick with this. But basically, we look at your EMS calls. Basically, we look at it from 2 standpoints. One is response. Are you going, you know, code 2 or code 3? And the other is, are you looking at it ALS or BLS? And we basically put it into a matrix that can include MPDS, Medical Priority Dispatch System, or dispatch type, right? So we can do it by either or by both. And we can look here and we say, so here we assume that this particular type of call or this particular MPDS call is ALS or BLS. And we basically look for variances, right? So the first one is code 3 versus non-code 3 or RLS versus non-RLS. And we're looking for the big variances. Are there calls where we're dispatching people low priority, but we're doing a code 3 transport to the hospital, right? So that could happen, but we probably want to look at that, at least from a medical director standpoint, to find out, is there something that we're assuming about the type of calls or MPDS determinant that we're applying this that we should look at. And the other one is ALS, BLS variance. And in order to do that, because all of this is really a local determination, we've created a setup tool. So each user is allowed to go in and basically determine what MPDS or type calls that they're looking for. Oop, I'm broke. Okay. Or the other one is, and we have a long list from the National Registry as well as 4 or 5 of our power users to create a drug formulary, very comprehensive drug formulary, and ALS interventions, or basically any type of intervention. Each agency then can determine, are these, you know, is this an ALS intervention or not? And do we expect this to be a code 3 call or, you know, code 2 dispatch? And basically just load it up and then run the data and see, you know, how things are going. And you'll note again, we do this temporarily over time, see what's going on. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And then down here we have the area. So for example, a medical director wants to look at opioid overdoses, for example, whatever the case may be. We have the ability then to have focus areas or KPIs or anything that's important to the agency down here to kind of look at that. So anyway, that's another kind of cool thing that we're doing. If you have an interest in that, I'm sure Terry and his folks would be happy to talk to you about it. Other than that, I don't think I have a whole lot.
I don't have any more questions coming in, it doesn't look like.
Cool.
So I would just remind folks that up in your queue, there are a couple of those handouts, PDFs that are in there for you to download if you would like. One of them is talking about foam, and the other one is just kind of like a nice little overview about different components of FirstWatch and the products that we have. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody that participated today and came on and the great questions that you asked. Appreciate you all.
Right. Thank you so much for your time and your interest.
And I'd like to also thank everybody for joining us. Within the next week, you will get the email with the link to their site so you can download this recording. And Chris, Terry, Dan, thank you so very, very much. You all have a great day.
Right. Appreciate you, Cindy. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.